So, yep, I'm going to start off with a few slides to provide some context and some background around the FBIS platform, just to get us into the headspace of freshwater data in South Africa, and particularly this platform. And we'll spend the first sort of 15-20 minutes just going through some context, and then we're going to launch into working with the platform itself and working through some examples and some key workflows. So just at the start, to acknowledge that this is it's a collaborative project. There are actually way more collaborators than this, but just at the sort of highest level, it's a project that's being run by the Freshwater Research Center, but there's a collaboration with Sandy for some of the development that's happened. The technical developer for the platform is a group called Cartosa, and most of the development has been funded by the JRS Biodiversity Foundation. And this project and this platform is all about unlocking data. Can I just ask that you mute yourself, please?
Okay, I know you needed to say me. Let me just come out and speak to you.
Cool. Sorry about that. So, yeah, the whole objective with today's session and the platform as well is to just make data more accessible, especially high quality data, high confidence data, so that we can improve our research, improve our management, improve our decision making around freshwaters in South Africa. So, yeah, we'll start off with an overview, and then we'll launch into workflows, and we're going to create time for a question and answer session if any questions come up. During the workflow testing. So to start off with, about the FBIS, I think nothing sets the scene like this slide from the National Biodiversity Assessment, which shows how freshwater ecosystems are really among the most threatened in South Africa, and it's aquatic species in inland waters like amphibians and fish that are in the most trouble, the highest proportion of critically endangered and endangered species. It's a big conservation challenge that we face for freshwaters in this part of the world. But at the same time, we're also faced with a data challenge. We're very much of the view that effective management and conservation and decision-making around any ecosystem is really only as good as the data that support those decisions, that support those management plans, and that support those conservation strategies. And in South Africa, we've had an interesting past of access to freshwater data. There have been some really good periods where platforms like the Rivers database have provided us with good access to good data, and then other periods where there actually just hasn't been, where data have not been accessible. And we ended up in the situation a few years ago where we knew there were a lot of valuable data out there for freshwater biodiversity in South Africa, but they were hard to access. There wasn't really a place where you could go to really get quick and reliable access to data. So this project, the development of the Freshwater Biodiversity Information System, came out of this need for access to data, specifically for freshwater data in South Africa. And the project started with a consultation with a range of different data users, different kinds of people that use freshwater biodiversity data. And that was really what we based the platform on, the needs of water users, of data users for freshwater in South Africa. And so a platform was born, which is called the Freshwater Biodiversity Information System. And it's really an effort to rise to this challenge, this freshwater data challenge in South Africa. It's free and open for anybody to use. The URL is www.freshwaterbiodiversity.org. And yeah, this is what the landing page looks like when you arrive on the platform. So if you see this, you'll know you're in the right place. What is the FBIS? Well, in a nutshell, it's an online database. It provides access to existing freshwater biodiversity data. It brings data sets together from a range of different places, as I'll explain. It provides some pretty powerful tools for analyzing and grouping and visualizing freshwater data. And importantly, it's also a repository for adding freshwater data to. So on the one hand, it's creating access to existing or historical data sets, but it's also like moving forward a great place to add data to, and we'll get into that a little bit as well. It's a spatial interface. It's a web-based application. So once you go into freshwaterbiodiversity.org and click on the map, this is what you'll see. And all the colorful dots are sites where freshwater biodiversity data occur, South Africa. As of this morning, there were close on 800,000 occurrence records for freshwater taxa in South Africa, just over 10,000 taxa. So that's everything from fish to frogs, inverts to algae, plants, a range of different groups, over 500 users. And you can see from the uploads and downloads that we have users engaging with the system, both adding data and also using data from the platform. There's a growing portfolio of biodiversity modules. At the moment, there are data for fish and invertebrates, algae, adult odonates, dragonflies, there's anurans and plants. And on the landing page of the platform, you can get a nice breakdown of the number of records and sites for each of these different modules. But needless to say, it's a fairly big, it's a fairly large amount of data that are being served through this platform. Certainly the biggest for this part of the world, and it's growing all the time. New data records are coming in from users or from links with other databases. So yeah, that gives you some sense of what the platform is about and what it's serving. For those of you that are interested in how it actually works, this is just a schematic that shows some of the main elements, but it's a biodiversity platform. So at the core are biodiversity data, and at the core of that are species lists. So for each of those modules, whether it's fish or amphibians or plants, we create lists of species that are known to occur in South Africa. And then based on what species or taxa are included in those lists, data are pulled into the platform. Some data come from the literature or existing databases that individuals or organizations might have. We also have FBIS users that add data to the platform, and that's an ongoing thing. We pull data in from other existing platforms like the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, which in turn pulls data in from other platforms like iNaturalist. And we also draw on data attributes from existing platforms. From IUCN, we bring in species conservation status. So that enables us to assign a conservation status to all the taxa in that master list of fish or frogs or dragonflies based on what the IUCN says it is or what SANBI says it is nationally. And then we use GBIF as the base of our taxonomic backbone. So we pretty much use global standards for most of the important biodiversity considerations. There's also an abiotic component to the platform. The focus is on biodiversity, but we also serve data on water quality and temperature and habitat conditions. And there's a third pillar which involves spatial layers, whether those are management layers like protected areas, or whether those are hierarchical geological layers like catchments or geomorphological zones. And these three pillars are all connected in the platform and allow users to do data queries, to do data downloads, to visualize data on dashboards, and to, at every step of the way, be able to see where each data point comes from. The main outputs are biodiversity data, biomonitoring data, and companion environmental data. And the whole objective here is for these outputs to result in an improved freshwater decision-making environment in South Africa. And that's both from management and conservation perspective, but also from a science and research perspective as well. All right, if we're looking at management and decision making in South Africa, the FBIS is now being used to provide data for the National Biodiversity Assessment. It's going to be used in the development of the next FIPA layer, for IUCN red listing, which I think is 2027 or 2028 is the next one for freshwater fish, if I've got that right. It's going to allow a lot of these processes and these decision tools just to be more data driven on the freshwater data side. National monitoring by DWS are using the FBIS, and environmental affairs screening tool is drawing on data from the FBIS as well. And just to show you as an example how that works, the screening tool is basically a sensitivity filter for biodiversity in South Africa to help guide developments across the country. And we were able to create sensitivity layers for freshwater taxa using data from the FBIS that were downloaded, converted into threatened species maps, and then amalgamated to form national scale freshwater fish sensitivity layers, which now set an alarm bell off if a development is proposed for those places. So it's really putting these big data sets to work in a way that has never happened before. It's a very exciting time, I believe, for freshwater data in South Africa, and to have a more data-driven approach to management and conservation. And I think it's just going to get better as more and more data come in. But today is really a little bit more of an academic lens on the applications of the platform. How can we use the FBIS in science and research? How has it been used? And what we're seeing is a growing number of researchers and studies using the FBIS and data accessed from the FBIS in their research and their analyses, which for us is just wonderful to see. An example of a recent study that's used FBIS data was one by Mo Kaji, who's one of our PhD students, and he used the freshwater fish data set for South Africa to get new insights into the status of native and non-native species and how well our protected areas are doing it at looking after our threatened species. So all of a sudden, easy access to these comprehensive data sets being brought together from different places into the same format and quickly and easily downloadable makes new kinds of analyses and insights possible. And I think that's really exciting from a science and research perspective. So I've now given you guys a sense of what the platform's about, what it does, and some of the main kind of applications that can be used for. And next, I want to focus on a few very simple workflows. I want all of you to leave today's session with a bit better understanding of how do you actually get data out of the platform, how can you add data to the platform, and I want to give everybody a chance to ask any questions that come up while we do that. So I'm going to switch over now to FBIS. But while I'm doing that, if anybody's got a question, please just raise your hand. Yeah, and we'll get to you. Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands yet. Just fine. While we're at it, I'm going to pop a few links in the chat. Thanks everybody for adding your name and your affiliation to the chat. If you haven't done that already, please do. Just a few things before we launch onto the platform. Some questions may come up today, but other questions might come up in the future. Email us any time of the day or night with questions and queries. We have, in addition to the main FBIS website, we have a testing site, which is refreshed every week, and it's a great place to test out data searches or data uploads. I'm putting the link for that in the chat, and that's what I'll be using today. And if any of you guys want to use that as well, then I would recommend it. You can add as many data points as you like, and they don't have to be accurate. It's a nice way to test out different workflows. The last link I'm going to add is a link to FBIS tutorials. Pretty much everything that we covered today is available in a series of 12 tutorials, freely available on YouTube. So those are a few resources for you. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so over to the platform we go. You guys seeing a map?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Okay, fantastic. Good. So let's start at the beginning. This is what the homepage looks like of the platform. I've shown you this already. And if you haven't signed up before, this is where you can sign up. So it's quite a quick and easy sign up process. And once you've signed up, you're able to log in, and that just allows you to download data and to harness the full power of the platform. It's free. There's no subscription fee. And once you registered and logged in, you can then explore the map interface. So for those of you that haven't registered before, I suggest you do it now while I'm talking. And if you're having any issues, just shout. It should be quick and painless. All right. So this is where most of the action happens on the platform. And I'm not going to show you everything today. For that, you can the tutorials are available, but I want to make sure you get a sense of the main tools and the main workflows today to get you started. You can see that the platform has a lot of different sites on it, and they're actually grouped by ecosystem type. Rivers in yellow, wetlands in green, etc. And you can close this legend by clicking on it. And then it's this search bar on the left where most of the functionality is found on the platform. I'm going to skip these bottom sections and go up to the third from the top tab, which is called the layer selector. And this is a tool that can be used to visualize layers. We've got on the FBIS at the moment, I think must be over 30, maybe close to 40 spatial layers that can be turned on and off to visualize data on the platform. I'll turn on the National Wetland Map 6, which is one of the recent layers that we've added, and you'll see that starts loading. And that comes with a legend as well. So you can see the different colors on the map. Those are explained by the different colors in the legend. And what's cool about the layer selector is you can move layers up and down, which you may want the sites on top, but the rivers on the bottom, and you can adjust the opacity of layers as well. So that's a really nice way just to explore data sets and to visualize your data. A really useful tool that I use a lot is called the lasso tool, which allows you to draw a polygon around any data point or any group of data points in any area that you might be interested in, and do a data query based on those. Gives you a nice amount of flexibility. All right. And the next is the search bar. And at the top of the search bar here is a little reset button, which is really useful to hit every time in between searches. It'll just clear your search history and give you a fresh, clean slate from which to search. So this search panel this is where most of the tools are found for querying data. And I'm going to walk you through these because I think it's really important to have an understanding of these. And then I'm going to do an example to show just how you can use them. But the filters also give you an idea of the different attributes that the data on FBIS have. By attributes, I mean the different labels that the data have and can be filtered by. So starting from the top and working down, you have ecosystem type. And you can see here the default is all different ecosystems are on, which means we are seeing data from rivers, wetlands, open water bodies, and even data points that haven't been specified. But you can turn some on and some off depending on what you're interested in and do a data query that way. Every time you want to do a data query, you use this little arrow here on the top of the search bar. So you make your selection using these filters, and then you hit this little arrow, and that'll return your data, which I'll go through in a sec. We've got these different biodiversity modules that I've shown you already. The default is that they're all on, but if you want to search for a specific group of freshwater creatures or plants, you can focus in on, for example, the fish. There's an abiotic module as well. Not all of the biodiversity data are associated with abiotic data, but some are. And you can request only data that have companion abiotic data, or that have water chemistry data associated, or physicochemical data associated with them as well. There are different data sources. I showed you guys on the schematic how GBIF data, for example, are pulled in as our data from the virtual museum, and the FBIS data are just user-added data or data from the literature. And again, you can refine your search using those. There are validated and unvalidated data on the platform. Validated data have been approved by experts. Unvalidated data have not yet. And similarly for SAS data, you can distinguish your search between, hey, I want all SAS data, or hey, I want only SAS data from accredited practitioners. In addition to the spatial filters, which we'll get into below, you can also filter data temporally by year and even by month if you want to get a little more granular. And yeah, so if you want the platform to return a specific time slice of data, that's where you do it. And there are quite a few options for filtering the data spatially. So you can filter by things like geomorphological zone or wetland hydro geomorphic type. Geomorphological zone allows you to specify, for example, I only want data from the mountain stream zone, and you click that, and then data for that zone only will be returned. Again, the default is always that you'll receive everything. You can filter by province, ecoregion, and water source area. Those filters are bundled together in the second tab here. So this allows you to filter by provinces or neighboring countries, which is quite a commonly used filter, especially because a lot of decision making is done provincially as well. And we have freshwater ecoregions as a filter option, and then that's the global ecoregions, but also the South African level ecoregions. You can specify which spatial region you want data for. And again, with water source areas, both ground and surface, you can refine your search using those options. You can filter by management area at different scales, and catchment at different scales. You can filter by protected areas, and you can get quite specific. You may be interested in a particular protected area or a particular kind of protected area for an analysis. Similarly with the conservation areas, these are the layers from environmental affairs. And you can also filter for using attributes from the National Biodiversity Assessment from SANBI as well. There are data from that. Then there are some filters for climate and vegetation. And after that, there are, ecosystem conservation status options, hydrological region, thermal options, water body types, and a pesticide risk filter as well. So there's a lot packed into this. This has come from the requests of different kinds of end users, right? So not everybody needs to become familiar with all of these things. There may just be one or two or three of these that you will find really useful. And I'd encourage you to familiarize yourself with those rather than try to work with everything. So that gives you a sense of the spatial filters available. And then you can filter also using biological attributes of the data. One example would be to filter for different ecosystem conditions using SAS monitoring data available in South Africa. There's a wealth of SAS records available for through FBIS, and you can specify in your search if you want all the SAS records or if you want a subset of the records based on the ecosystem condition that the SAS results revealed. I use the next two filters quite a bit with fish analyses, where you can distinguish your query or your search between native and non-native species. So all of the fish species and amphibian species and some of the other groups in our master species lists have labels about their native or non-native status and have labels about their endemism status, and those can be used to return subsets of the data based on origin and endemism. We've got about 8 different endemism categories ranging from unique to a single river or a single wetland right the way through to unique to South Africa and beyond. So there's quite a bit of flexibility here when filtering based on where a species comes from or where it's unique to, or a group of species. And then conservation status, you can filter by the IUCN conservation status categories in this first drop down over here. So these are the global conservation status of species. And then there's also the SANBI's national conservation status of species, which is not always the same as the IUCN one. And yeah, that's for species that have been assessed. A lot of the taxa on FBIS, for example, all of the algae taxa, as far as I know, have not had their conservation status assessed. There may be some that have, but yeah, for those that do, it's a useful tool. And then towards the bottom of the filters, you can actually refine your query by reference category and study reference. So you may only be interested in, for example, data coming from peer-reviewed scientific articles. Those are pretty high quality data usually. So you can say, give me only the slice from those data. Sorry about that. Or you can cast the net more broadly and select multiple of these. All right. Then moving down, you can filter for a specific study reference by typing the name of a reference into this panel. If you're interested in the data from a particular study or the data owned by a particular person, so that would have been the person who's added the data to the platform or who's the lead author of the study. And I'll leave out this decision support tool tab at the bottom for now. All right. So that gives you, I would say, a pretty good overview of the main tools available to you on the platform. But now I think what will probably be quite useful is to just walk you through how you actually do a query, how you do a data search. And then I'm going to give you a chance to try one for yourselves. All right. So I think as an example, what we'll do is we'll take a situation where we're interested in critically endangered species of freshwater fish from protected areas. We may find ourselves in a situation where we want to see which protected areas in South Africa have critically endangered fish species living in them so that we can make sure that they are being adequately protected in those protected areas. It's quite a common kind of question because protected areas aren't always designed with freshwater species in mind. So we can even further refine our search to look only at rivers. So if we want to do that, we'll deselect the other kinds of ecosystems. We're going to focus only on freshwater fish. So we'll highlight the fish module. We'll leave all the data sources on. And we'll leave the validation status on default. We won't specify a temporal filter for the search, but spatially, we're going to want to select our protected areas so that our search returns for us only biodiversity data from within protected areas. So we scroll down through the spatial filters to protected areas, and you can select, like I showed you, a particular protected area that you may have in mind, but by actually clicking this checkbox, that'll return for you data from all protected areas. And we are now ready. Oh no, we wanted to look at critically endangered species only. So then we'll scroll down to the conservation status tab and select critically endangered. And so the point here being is you can actually select multiple of these spatial or temporal or ecological filters at the same time to hone in on your data subset of interest, which is really useful. You can get a bit more creative with your searches. So once you've selected your filters, you then hit the search button, and you can see it actually highlights the different filters that you've selected. So it shows you what your search comprises, and the time it takes for your search result to appear just really depends on how big the data set is and how complex the query is. Sometimes you do have to be patient because we're pulling in data and layers from several different places. But you can see here, I would say this is a medium-sized search where we're returning 500 odd records for our critically endangered freshwater fish that fall within protected areas. The red lines that have come up on the map just show the protected area boundaries in South Africa. And you'll see if you zoom in on a particular area that the sites that are being returned are falling inside those protected area boundaries. So the first thing you get when you do a query is this search result panel, which gives you the lowdown of your sites and your taxa, your number of records, but you can open up a site's overview panel, which is typically the next step, by clicking this little sites overview button. And that brings up this summary dashboard on the right here. It shows you what filters you've applied. We filtered by protected areas, conservation status, critically endangered, and river ecosystems. We specified only fish. That's why only fish data have been returned here. And this just gives you a little summary of the data that are returned from your search. The next step is to go into a more detailed dashboard, and you do that by hitting this green button. And this takes you to what we call our detailed dashboard. And this gives a more comprehensive summary and visualization of the data from your search. So the right-hand side of the dashboard is the visual side, and the left-hand side is the more data summary side. But it's all information about critically endangered freshwater fish from protected areas in South Africa. You've got your filter history at the top here and a map showing where your records are found. And you then have a breakdown of the data. They're summarized in different ways, for example, by origin and endemism and conservation status. The data are presented in terms of unique site visits. So that's when a particular place was visited on a particular day and a record was associated with that combination of time and space. And then there are the occurrence data for our search. And the basic data currency of FBIS are occurrence data records, which include a record with coordinates and a timestamp for a particular taxon. And you can visualize a summary of the data here, but you can also download a CSV file of the full set of raw data from your search. So all 500 odd of those records to be downloaded in a CSV file with all of the data attributes included as columns in that Excel spreadsheet is what you'll get. If you hit download as a CSV, you'll be prompted to indicate what you want to use it for. And once you hit download, your download will be initiated, and you'll then receive an email with a download link once it's ready. It usually takes just a couple of minutes. And that's really how you get to the most detailed representation of the data. Martine, go for it.
Just a quick question. The taxonomic revisions that are sort of known but not published, like is that taken into account here, or are you guys waiting for the formal species descriptions, which will result in, I'm guessing, going through every record, well, not manually, but actually going through everything record by record to say which of the Bachelli complex, this specific record belongs to? So I'm just looking at 400 occurrences of Pseudobarbus bachelli. Would that only be for the Trotto redfin, or for the whole, or for the currently described bachelli?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Martine, and I understand what you're asking. So the taxonomic backbone that we're following is that on GBIF and IUCN.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it's typically lagging behind what we know.
I'd expect as much.
Yeah, so you're quite right. The challenge really comes when we have a widespread species that gets split into a greater number of taxa that may or may not be overlapping in space, and that's when we need to have a really close look at the data and make sure that the correct points are assigned to the correct taxon. In this case with Bachelli, I think we're at this awkward place where the Pseudobarbus bachelli is on GBIF and IUCN categorized as critically endangered, but you and I know that not all of those records are associated with the critically endangered taxon. So that's a bit of an anomaly, but yeah, the point being that we try to keep to those backbones, even though they're a bit slow in updating. Yeah, and we wait for the formal descriptions.
Cool, thanks. No, because we've got exactly the same problem with our state of biodiversity database records. It's also like, when exactly do you start splitting? Do you like sort of get ahead of the science, or do you just sort of enter records that you sort of know is like not wrong, but you know it's going to get split in the future. Yeah, no, so just saying we're struggling with the same issues. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I mean, my personal view is I've adopted the approach of waiting for the formal descriptions, just because what I have noticed in the past is sometimes we think it's going to be called whatever it is, Chilobarbus, but then something happens and
Yeah.
there's a new discovery made before it's published and it changes again, and then it can actually get even
Yeah,
more
and often, yeah,
confusing.
it also get even the genus name, like some of them is changing, and then you think you're still just gonna have like pseudobarbus everywhere, and suddenly you've got those new genera that's like, oh my word. Yeah. No, I think taking a sit and wait approach is probably the best here. So,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it's an issue with the fish and with the amphibians, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be other taxonomic groups as well. Great. So that's we're kind of looking at the detailed dashboard now for a query of critically endangered fish from parks in South Africa or protected areas. And the right, it's the same information but just packaged visually. So you have a summary at the top of this data set packaged by ecological attributes of the species like endemism or conservation status, or packaged by sampling method or biotope, where those samples were collected. Really just depends on what you're interested in with your analysis. The records are presented by year and number of occurrences for threatened species in in protected areas, sorry, by year. And then, again, fleshed out by conservation status or endemism, or origin. At the bottom of the dashboard is the metadata table, and what this is a breakdown or a summary of where all the data points came from. This is really important to have alongside your search at all times. We present this at the bottom of the detailed dashboard. So you can see that the data that you're seeing in this occurrence graph is coming from a lot of different places. It's coming from databases. Martine just mentioned the State of Biodiversity database from Cape Nature. Some of those data are featuring here. There are several peer-reviewed scientific articles as well. There will definitely be data coming in from the GBIF as well. So what the FBIS does, one of the most powerful things, is that it essentially harmonizes data from different places, gets it into the same place, the same format, and makes it allows users to see the data, the patterns in those data once they're all brought together. All right. So a query would typically end here with this detailed dashboard, or with the download of a CSV file to look at even more detailed, or basically to get a spreadsheet of the data. So I'd like to just show you what that looks like, because you can analyze the data further from that. So let me bring up what that spreadsheet looks like. Sorry, I'm a bit slow on my sharing. All right, here we are. So if you download a CSV file of your, oh, sorry, wrong spreadsheet. Here we go. Bear with me, ladies and gentlemen, the least elegant Zoom screen sharer of all time, but I'll get there. All right, so this is what the CSV file download looks like. It's a very detailed spreadsheet, but again, not everybody's going to need everything, but this gives you everything. So one of the columns in the spreadsheet will be the species or the taxon that the rest of the data revolve around. And then everything else in the spreadsheet are other attributes of that data point, whether it's its taxonomy or the location of the site and the date where the sample was collected, information about the river and the ecosystem, and then information about the sampling. That's one of the great things about the FBIS platform, is that it can accommodate information on sampling effort, sampling method, catch per unit effort, details about the habitat where the sample was collected, and then all the different attributes basically from it's all the information associated with all the different spatial filters that can be used on FBIS. So everything from things like water management area right the way through to the catchment are all recorded in different columns. There's also, if we were to scroll along this sheet, you would see that there's also information on the reference or the metadata that the data point came from, and if there are any abiotic or physicochemical data for that data point, those will also be available in this spreadsheet. So if you want to do a detailed analysis, you would probably download this CSV file, identify the data attributes or columns that you're the most interested in, and then run your analysis from here. Okay. If you do use data from the FBIS to do an analysis or a project or a scientific publication, we're really trying to make sure that the data gets cited correctly. Not only that the platform's cited correctly, but also that the original owners of the data, or the people who collected it originally, are credited in the correct way. So I just want to show you guys where to find the citation information for FBIS. So I've just gone back to the homepage, freshwaterbiodiversity.org, or I'm on the testing site equivalent. But if you scroll right down to the bottom of the homepage, past all the information about the platform, there are some quick links down here, and one of them is called citation. And if you click on that, it brings up the citation guidelines for the platform. So it's just really important, yeah, to familiarize yourself with these if you are going to be using data downloaded from the platform. And there are examples of how you can cite the platform, and also how to make sure you are acknowledging all of the data contributors who have contributed data to the data set that you've downloaded and analyzed. The way we have been approaching this is to actually include in an appendix of a scientific paper or a student thesis or a report, a table showing all the data sources that's where the data come from. And that's just like a really important part of this, this data culture that we're trying to encourage with this platform. All right. Have any questions come up for anyone in terms of getting data out of FBIS? Do those workflows make sense? Any major queries or ideas that have come into your heads while I've been walking you through those? Okay. Almost complete silence.
Sorry, Jeremy, it's Gwen. I don't know how to raise my hand. I seem to have lost my hand. I just want to say hi to everybody. I just see there are a couple of colleagues of mine, which is quite nice. I just wanted to check with you. I mean, we've never used it, so obviously we're going to start using it now. Is there a sort of like a requirement for wetland consultants, because we would use specialists, and then, you know, the basis that we start from is the DFFE screening report, and then there's a protocol according to which they need to work and conduct their studies. So have we, because I mean, this is amazing. They can find an enormous amount of information on this. Is how much clout or emphasis does this have within the wetland consulting fraternity? I mean, can I put in my brief that they have to consult this, or you know, how is it done? Still voluntarily, or how is that done? How is your system enforced? That's the one question. And then the other one I have is our wetland specialist, which I can also request now, is that they're required to upload their results onto your system. But I've got 30 years, and I'm sure DeVet also has, you know, 30 years of reports and documents and shape files and, you know, whatever that we can make available to upload onto this. Yeah, how do we go about this? Because I think the value in any data set is the data that's actually captured. And if there is historic data that could be captured, how do we go about getting that done? So that's a double question. Do the wetland consultants upload it? And then if we've got historic information, how?
Okay, thanks, Gwen. You went on to mute there, but I think we got the gist of it. So in terms of uploading data, that's the next section in today's session. So watch this space. In terms of wetland consultants adding data, well, the platform is open for anybody to add data, as long as those data meet certain requirements of the FBIS, like, you know, there are spatial coordinates and a timestamp and yeah, a species occurrence record, for example. But in terms of how to enforce it, so how to make it mandatory for certain sectors of people collecting data to upload data to the FBIS platform, that's a really interesting conversation, and I think it's an ongoing conversation. I'm not familiar enough with the wetland community and data community to really be able to engage on that, but my gut feel on that is it might be an interesting conversation for us to have, because there are other similar situations where it looks like it's going to start becoming mandatory to upload sampling records to FBIS for certain types of surveys, especially linked to management. So Helen, I'm not sure if you want to add anything onto how we encourage or try to almost enforce data sharing to FBIS.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I mean, we encourage uploading. Obviously, the wetland fraternity, this phase of FBIS mobilized a lot of wetland data and sort of made it speak more to wetland, rather, because it was focused on rivers prior to this version of the FBIS. And we are in the process of reaching out to wetland practitioners, but obviously sessions like today, where you have somebody who's specifically interested, is a great way to like wave the flag and try and get people to use the platform in terms of their assessments. I know it is going to become, there's going to be a link to the EIA screening tool, so there'll be a direct conduit to the FBIS platform for when doing things like EIA. So that is something already in the pipeline. And yeah, in terms of uploading data, it's an easy process. We can facilitate bulk uploads of historical data within the FRC, but we're trying to increase the number of data providers so that it doesn't rest with one organization to upload data, but that part of the training is around training data providers and putting their own data in, and obviously providing a lot of good functionality on the platform where it actually makes it's quicker to upload the data direct onto the platform rather than into your own Excel spreadsheet file, which then never gets accessed by anybody else, and the data can be reused and repurposed for that reason. A bit of a ramble answer, but hopefully it covers a few topics.
No, it does. Thanks, Ellen. I think after the session in the weeks to come, what we'll do, or I'll make contact with you and show you what we have, and what the format of the documents are that we have, and then you can kind of gauge whether it would be valuable or not. But we could take this offline then. Thank you very much.
100%. We're always very grateful for people reaching out with data that can be included so that more people can benefit from such hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. And thanks, Gwen. Devet?
Thank you, guys. Maybe just to latch on to Gwen's questions. I'm a wetland specialist, and we've been having a lot of talks around how to get data up and what data do you add onto that. I think it's critical for you guys to decide what the parameters would be linking to that specific wetlands. Do you add PES? Do you add EIS? What aspects do you add to that layer so that it becomes a workable layer for everybody going forward? Assessments differ. Whether I just do a delineation in that sort of category that one can do, and you only upload a delineation, or do you upload the delineation with an assessment, and all depends on what type of assessment have you done. Have you looked at functionalities? Have you just looked at ecological aspects? So there's a multitude there, and I think that's something that one needs to discuss, and maybe you need to take that up with the Wetland Forum, so to get a standard that one can upload to, and that will ease the process. At the moment, I think a lot of the wetland specialists want to upload and want to provide the data, but it becomes so onerous because there's no structure, and we obviously need a structure to latch onto. So that's the one. And I think my question that I had when I raised my hand is linking and in getting data from the system. How do one handle data that has been sort of captured and seen on the system that is very obviously wrong? When you have a site in Gauteng and the site description gives you 2929 CB, which is in KZN, and it refers to Sani Pass. So how do one sort of communicate and rectify that? Because there's no link to the person or on the system who's actually uploaded the data, or the capturing of that. So my question is, how do we communicate errors in the system? And second to that is, if I do a delineation and I do a fine scale delineation on something that has been done at a very broad scale, how do you guys handle that? Sorry for the multitude of questions.
No, thanks, Devet, for the questions and the comments. So maybe I'll share a few reactions, and Helen may want to jump in again as well. But in terms of the wetland module on FBIS, it's something it's one of the more recent modules that we've developed, and it's been developed by a group of wetland scientists, and it's also been developed kind of in collaboration with SANBI. So Kate Snadden, I don't think she's on the call right now, but she's really led this process and spent quite a lot of time speaking to wetland practitioners to figure out what are the the most critical and most relevant parts of wetland assessments to include in the FBIS database, and how do we make that as easy and as user-friendly as possible to accept those data and to serve those data. So without being a wetland specialist myself, I can just say that I think that the wetland module as it stands is probably going to cater for a fair bit of what's needed in terms of uploading data, but not everything. We can't do everything with one system. And then just to comment on your other question about erroneous records, there are a lot of incorrect records on that are served on FBIS. A great example is we're pulling in all of the GBIF data, all of the data from GBIF available for all of the species in our master list. So for all of the fish, amphibians, insects, algae, and plants that we know exist in South Africa, we're pulling in all the GBIF data for those. And there are, in that GBIF data set, there are a fair amount of issues and errors. So in the FBIS platform, our service is to provide all of the data and also to provide ways to filter subsets with greater confidence. For example, data that have been verified or collected by an accredited practitioner. And we're also working towards expert-approved subsets of the data that are a higher quality than everything else. For example, with the screening tool for fish, we've labeled all of the data that were combed out by experts as being greenlit for that process, giving them their own specific label so that you can filter when it comes to threatened fish in South Africa only for the records that were signed off on by the experts. But I think the main point when it comes to errors is that every single record is traceable back to its reference. For example, we've had some freshwater fish records that we've found out in the ocean, which are clearly wrong. We've gone back to that. Okay, it's a record that's come from GBIF, that we've pulled in from GBIF. Okay, and then because we pull in the GBIF ID, we can trace it back. Oh, that was uploaded by SIAB. And then we can go back to SIAB and get in touch with them and say, this record for this redfin minnow is out in the ocean, and then they can correct it. So that's the workflow for that. So we do hope that it's going to illuminate errors in data sets. And some of those are going to be fixable, but like you said, some of them aren't, but they will all be traceable. Helen, I don't know if there's anything particular you want to add to either of those points.
Yeah, probably. Thanks, Jim. Just in terms of like the delineation of the wetlands. So we've served up the National Wetlands version 6 map. And one of the features, maybe you can share your screen while I'm talking, Jim, on the FBIS platform is to allow wetlanders, if they've gone to a wetland and it is or isn't on the map, there's a way to directly contribute knowledge about specific wetlands, because we all know that the wetlands database is by no means, the end of the game. It's a work in progress. And so Nancy Job and Kate Snadden and colleagues are encouraging wetland practitioners, if they find an erroneous wetland or an erroneous point, that they feedback directly, and that goes to the wetland team to comment on. So that's one way of feeding back data. And then there is just a general message tag that if you open up the FBIS platform, you can actually see. Are you going to open it up, Jim, just to demonstrate it quick?
Can you see the map or not?
So just the map. No, I'm not seeing your screen. I don't think you're sharing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am the worst sharer.
So just show those two on the the general comment button, and then there's one specifically around wetland delineations. We are going to also allow functionality going forward if you have delineated your own wetland to be able to upload that as a file and then to add data to that specifically. But that isn't quite there yet. slowly coming on, Jim. Doesn't come yet.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, there we go. So wetland map feedback. So if you go to you survey a wetland and on the map it is or isn't a wetland, you can write commentary issue around the wetland mapping issue. So if you click on the arrows where it says wetland not mapped, you'll get an option to say the wetland. So click on the dots, the drop down there, Jim. Wetland not mapped.
Sorry, I did,
arrows.
Helen. I did,
you'll
but there's just
see-
a delay.
Oh, it's super slow. Oh dear.
Mm.
You'll be able to give input about that particular wetland, you know, saying this is mapped as a wetland, but in fact it's not a wetland. And then the team in this way hopes to be able to improve the delineation of the wetlands at a national scale. Yeah.
Sorry,
Right.
Helen, to just
So, yeah,
jump in
there is
there, the option just to correct the description. This wetland was delineated correctly, but the description refers to KZN, where it's actually based in Gauteng.
Okay, so maybe we should include another field, incorrect description or something like that.
Or
as a
just
drop
other,
down.
and then you can put it in the
Other, yeah.
description.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that easily. We can add in another field for logging issues. Not a
Yeah, because
problem.
we found quite a lot of that in I mean, I've just got some example on a specific site that I'm dealing with now, and the descriptions are quite wrong, but the delineations are correct.
Is that for a delineation of a wetland itself, or is it a site? Because
It's for a delineation of a wetland.
okay, perfect.
There's a
Yeah.
multitude of wetlands within the system, and some of it's been documented, some not. But the ones that's been documented all refers back to KZN, which is obviously wrong.
Great. Thank you very much for that. We'll add another option to say other, and then you would just click on the wetland and click other, and then in your description describe what what it should be and indicate it's wrong, and then that can hopefully improve the wetland map going forward. Thank you.
All right. So we are nearing the end of the session, but I'm going to just spend the last 10 minutes walking through uploading data to the platform. So far, we've had an overview of why the FBIS was developed, roughly how it works, how do you get data out of it, the different ways, and yeah, the last sort of section is really on how do you contribute data to the platform. But I think just to precede that with why should you take the time out of everybody's already busy schedules to share data to the FBIS platform. And for me, there's a few reasons why it makes sense. I think that the first one is just that it's a nice way to store data in the long term. Once the data are up on here, you've got a copy that will be maintained indefinitely. But perhaps more importantly is the fact that data points are really valuable. Our development of fish sensitivity layers for the screening tool were based on data that were collected for a range of different purposes, specific scientific studies, student projects, consultants that were doing surveys for developments. And what we were able to do is use these data that were collected for a whole bunch of different purposes to actually harmonize them and use them for essentially a greater purpose of delineating fish sensitivity layers at a national level. So the philosophy of reusing data, because of the time and money that are invested in collecting every data point, is just a wonderful thing to do, and I think a critical thing for us to do here in South Africa. So just knowing that if you upload your data point to your data to the FBIS platform, that they will be used for reuse for other purposes, I think is an important one as well. All right. So when uploading data to the FBIS, there's really two different ways to do it, and Helen alluded to this already. sometimes we have a situation where,
Jim, sorry, we're not seeing a screen. Is there a screen?
no, it's still coming.
Okay.
Yeah, so Helen alluded to it, but there's two ways you can share data. And the less common way is through a bulk data upload template. That template looks something like this. It's an Excel spreadsheet with different fields that need to be populated. And this is typically for a case if people are sitting on a fairly large data set that's already in a spreadsheet that they're wanting to add to the FBIS platform. So then at this stage, how we're doing this is we will, if you get in touch with us and say, look, we've got this data set, we want to add it, then we'll work with you and assist you in getting your data into the right format. But essentially, there are a number of fields that need to be populated to meet the requirements of uploading the data, and then there are a whole bunch of other fields that can be entered as well if they're available. And what you'll find is on this bulk data upload template, it's all the mandatory things that you would be collecting when you're sampling: the site coordinates and date, the taxon that was present, some information about who collected the data, and etc. The details of how this works can be viewed on FBIS tutorial 12, which can be accessed on the link in the chat. Helen explains there exactly how this works and what a populated data sheet looks like. But just the emphasis is this is a specific workflow for big existing data sets. For example, I mean, this is how we've brought in existing data sets already. But the more common way that data are added to the platform are through the web instance itself. And so if we head back to the FBIS platform, which is probably loading for you guys. There seems to be a bit of a lag with the sharing, so I do apologize if things seem a bit out of sync. But data can be added directly through this special interface of FBIS, and there's kind of two ways that you can do it. You can add data to an existing site by clicking on a site, or you can create a new site. If you want to create a site where you've been sampling, you use this Add Site tab at the top right of the screen here, and you specify what ecosystem type the site was sampled in, and then you locate the area where you did your sampling. Let's say, for argument's sake, in this case, we were sampling the Holslet River just upstream of Rawsonville, where it flows out of the Statains Kloof Mountains. And you have an option to either create a new site or add to an existing site. The FBIS we've got a bug at the moment that we're working to fix. Normally you would, on this panel here, you would see any other sites in that area. And if your site was very close to or on top of an existing site, you may want to add it to that existing site. So for now, we'll say create a new site, and this site creation form auto-populates the latitude and longitude, and there are tools here to bring in the river name, to automatically generate a site code, and to bring in the geomorphological zone of your site, etc., etc. You can upload a site image. quite easily here as well. If you have one, you can add notes for the description, and for geomorphological zone and also for river name, you can add your own versions of this as well, which will be captured alongside the ones that are auto-populated from the map. Once you've filled out this site form, you have to agree to the FBIS terms and conditions, which are basically that the data that you're adding can be visualized and downloaded by registered FBIS users. But obviously, your metadata, you as the owner for that site, will be kept with that record, and you will be credited if the data are used for an analysis or a study. Okay. Once your site has been successfully added, and again, I apologize if this is taking a while for you guys to see, you're ready to go with adding biodiversity data that are associated with that site. And that can be data from any of the different biodiversity modules, or it can be SAS data if you were doing a biomonitoring assessment at the site. In our case, let's just say, for example, we were doing some fish sampling at this site on the Holsted River. There, you're then presented with a form for adding data to your site. The latitude and longitude are automatically populated, and then you basically have a form that allows you to fill in different kinds of information about the sampling that you did. When it was done, if you want to add an embargo period on the data, and then information about the different habitats that were sampled. These are standard, whether it's for fish or invertebrates or amphibians. We've included on FBIS the standard kind of measures that are done when doing these kinds of surveys. So everything from substrate to biotope. And then you get down to the section where you can specify your sampling method and effort. So in this case, we used electrofishing to do our fish sampling. Our effort was specified by time. We electrofished for 30 minutes, and you can then also specify what kind of record you collected. Was it an acoustic record, a sample for DNA? Did you collect the entire specimen? Did you have a photograph? Or was it the more common visual observation? And then you can also upload, again, a site image as well. Martine.
Do the record type, does that allow for more than one record type to be added? Can you say you collected a DNA sample as well as a voucher specimen? Or must you pick one type only?
That's a great question. I think at this point you can pick one type only, but I think we need to adjust that to be able to check multiple boxes.
That'll be lovely. Thanks.
Copy that. I've made a note. Thanks, Martine.
Well, thank you.
When we created the site, we uploaded a site image. But once you've created your site, this may be a site that you come back to add data again and again and again. And the way that site looks may change. So that's why you can, every time you do a site visit, essentially, you can come back and upload an additional photo of your site if you want to. The biodiversity data are the last information that are added. And what the FBIS does is, in our case, we're adding fish data. So it provides you with a species list of fish that have been recorded from that area. And in the Holslet, we were fortunate enough to find an indigenous species, the Cape Galaxius, but we only found one of them. So we checked that it was observed, and we indicate the abundance, which can be, and there's a few different units that could be used for abundance. In our case, it was number. So we got one fish of of the species Galaxius abratus in our 30 minutes of electrofishing. And then again, the next step is to agree to the terms and conditions and submit your record. And the next option you have is to enter some finer abiotic information if you collected that at the time of sampling, okay? So this is information, some more information about the habitat, things like the stream dimensions, the water turbidity, the canopy, the embeddedness, and then a whole big range of physicochemical parameters that may have been measured. There's quite an exhaustive list here. So you may just have measured one or two things, like perhaps you just measured dissolved oxygen in milligrams per liter, and that's all you have associated with your fish record. That's fine. And again, you would agree to sharing your data on the platform. And while we're going through this, just to remind you that this is the fish data upload form, but there are similar forms for the different modules. So for whether it's plants, whether it's algae, there's a specific SAS data upload form. There's one that's unique to wetlands. These have been customized to make it as easy and painless as possible to share the details of your sampling on the platform. So we don't have time to go through all of those, but hopefully this just gives you the feel, the sense of how these workflows operate, and then it's really up to you in your own time to explore how does creating a wetland site and adding wetland data workflow look, to work through that on your own, and come back to us with any questions. So once you've created your site, you've added your data, you're then asked to specify the reference. So this may be associated with a scientific paper, or it may be just unpublished data. In my case, it's part of a database that we have here at the Freshwater Research Center, our monitoring database. If you want to set one up for your organization, you can do that. It's a really nice way to link data from different surveys, and then you submit your source reference information to the platform, and that's really the end of your adding data to FBIS workflow. The data then come to a panel of experts that then just verify that the species you've recorded it appears to be an accurate record. Obviously, there's only so much verification you can do, but we do a basic check to make sure that the record ecologically makes sense, and then we verify it. But both verified and unverified data are available on the platform. And sort of before closing out, the last thing I want to add is that these workflows of adding data, whether it's biodiversity data or importantly SAS biomonitoring data, are soon going to be available on a mobile app. So it's going to be really easy just to create sites, to add biodiversity data, and to add biomonitoring data from the field. We're hoping that that's going to be released this month, and all of those data will automatically be channeled onto the FBIS platform, synced up once you're in Wi-Fi if you don't have in the field. So watch this space, but that's really it from me. For those who have looks like most of you have stuck with us through the session. So thank you for spending an hour and a half with us. And I know it's 2:00, but I'm happy to stick around and chat through any questions or suggestions if anything else came up during that last session.
Yeah, Jeremy, I must unfortunately dash. I'm already a bit late for the next thing I need to be at. Just want to say a very, very big thank you for this. Very helpful. Amazing amount of work that you guys have put into this. And just yeah, thanks for putting the product out there. Thanks for all the training time. And yeah, and I guess we all need to get cracking on getting our data up to date and into the database. I'm definitely a guilty party there. It's about a 6-month backlog. So yeah, no, just a big thanks.
Thanks, Martine. I know your time's precious, so it's been great to have you.